Y'all know I'm on team let the birth rate plummet to hell. So when I came across this post from the self subreddit, this is right up my alley. It says the birth rate crisis is too much of an understandable issue for me to really care about it. It makes too much sense why people aren't having kids for me to care. As it currently stands, people are doing their best to make a responsible decision. And I remember a long, long time ago, it was if you can't afford kids, don't have kids. Now people can't afford kids, so they're not having kids. And now they're like, what's going on? What's going on? All right, so that was a long title. Let's get into the post. This person says the birth rate shouldn't be viewed as an inherent failure in and of itself, but rather an understandable response to a harsh economic reality. We've got all these corporations freaking out about it, but F them, they're part of the problem. Everything's too damn expensive. There's not much of a world to bring a child into. Most people don't want to raise a baby in a cramped studio apartment. It doesn't matter how much money the effing government throws at them. It's not going to make a dent in the cost of raising that child. The best we can do is lower prices by driving a spear through the heart of the corporate beast via more regulations, higher taxes for the rich, and not a bunch of stupid tariffs that are only going to cost the consumer and drive up prices. That's about as counterproductive as shoving a 2x4 up your colon because you're constipated. Now that's an image. There's actually one proven method to lower the cost of housing, and it's pretty effing easy to do, especially considering we live in the most wealthiest countries in the world. The solution is build more houses. That's what England did in the 80s, and the housing prices were so affordable. Everybody lived in a house. Their houses all looked the same, but they all looked absolutely ineffable in comparison to a cardboard box. When there's more supply than there is demand, the prices will go down. It's basic economics. All we need to do is build more houses and lower the prices of the ones that pre-exist. Screw the few when there's the need for the many. But the housing market, they're not going to do that because they're sitting on a gold mine, just sitting on their butts and doing nothing. And they've got so many lobbyists in Congress paying off congressmen, so he gets a taste of sitting on his butt and getting paid to do nothing and be nothing. This is end stage capitalism. We've let things get too out of control, but not really. It was really just those in authority who did because they got paid off to. As the current economic climate rages on, I'm left with only more respect for parents struggling through it and raising their children to the best of their ability. And I find it very understandable why people who are considering having children are putting it off completely or deciding against it due to the economic climate. It's too understandable for me to really take any offense to as much as corporate America wants me to. I want to further clarify, I was only really speaking about that issue as it stands in America because I'm not as well versed as to the specific problems the Japanese and Koreans are facing. I know they're having it even worse, but I don't know much besides that. So for the record, I've mainly just been speaking on the issue as it stands in America. So this person is talking about the economics on it. I speak on the various different things, but the whole situation about Adriana Smith has me pissed off, really pissed off, because they are doing experiments with this woman's body. She is brain dead and still having to incubate a baby that is probably going to have issues on the back end. We have a climate where women are, if they have miscarriages, they're actually being jailed and held or prosecuted like Brittany Watts was in Ohio. There was another woman in Texas. She had a baby. She had a miscarriage in a public toilet, and they had that woman in jail for 5 months in Texas trying to prosecute a miscarriage. They're doing all of this to black women because they're trying to test the waters to see how far they can go with, pushing the envelope. They're really going to push women into just clamping down, and more women need to see and understand. Yes, the economics is one thing, the cost of living and all of that, but the political climate is also something that women need to know and understand as they are chipping away at our rights. And I jumped into this comment section saying, I hope the birth rate plummets to hell. This country doesn't deserve the sacrifice from women, and it's so dangerous to even consider getting pregnant in a forced birther state. And then I started talking about the whole Georgia thing. It just doesn't make sense for anyone that is of fertility age in a forced birther state. What if something goes wrong? You're still like, they are making women keep these, even if they're unviable, they're making them stay pregnant. They are really doing these experiments, and they're trying to see how far they can push it, how far the laws will let them push it. Okay, let's do a few of these comments. Sky Nettle says, I think the system as we know it is destined to change. It's reached the end of its cycle. As you pointed out, there are a mountain of problems, and the trend is for it to get worse. Something has to break. Maybe low birth rates is how that change will come about. It'll be a very different world if the population shrinks. Sammy says, I had read somewhere that part of the birth rate drop is because teen pregnancies are being lowered. That's a good thing, right? It definitely is a good thing, because especially, if you were coming up in the 90s like I was, it was like, don't get pregnant as a teen. Don't get pregnant as a teen. It was drilled into our heads, and so many people did not get pregnant as a teen. So they really need to stop with all of the these wild messages. We do not need more children having children. Bowser says, hijacking top comment to say, the declining birth rate might be a crisis for somebody, but it sure as hell ain't a crisis for me. This is the exact situation that the phrase, a failure of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part, was made for. Frankly, we should all be glad that is breaking, because this deserves to get broke. It really does. This country does not deserve more kids, more babies. How much it costs for women to have babies, and then we gotta feed, it's so much. And they're snatching away safety nets. They want us to have kids, but they're not incentivizing us. They should be subsidizing some child care. They should be subsidizing some of this health care, but they won't. So they don't deserve kids. Wolf Cola says, it will be an emergency for these people in the future. Being childless when the welfare state collapses and the markets stop growing, will make later life extremely unpleasant. But who cares? Nobody is going to have a baby right now and pay for all of the things that children cost right now, so that they might have somebody to be a caretaker later. I'm not having babies to be a caretaker. People need to stop with this line of thinking. You're birthing a child into already having a job. Like when they talk about they need more taxpayers or people to cover pensions. Absolutely not. We're not birthing babies so that there are people that can pay more taxes. This is not why we are sitting up here having babies. They need to stop with this line of thinking. Cal Noir says, the businesses of the world are worried that they're going to run out of human cogs to wear out in their machines. That's why it's a crisis. There's so many articles about some terrible impending worker deficit or similar wording, but since we know they don't actually care about the workers, it's obvious that they're not sure how they're going to keep everything growing, because the line must go up. Surprisingly, they're not just crowing that it's fine, because that automation they kept saying they just replace uncompromising workers with hasn't seemed to materialize in a fashion that can make up the difference. So they were talking about robots are going to come in and replace everything. AI is going to come in and replace everything. Obviously, that's not going to be the case, because they're still clamoring about the birth rate. Roski Boski says, the population has doubled since the mid-70s. Will we really want to add to pollution and climate change just to get more worker bees? We should stop this madness. Click Clack says, the birth rate thing is just their projected paranoia about losing a working class. Can't have slave labor without babies. Am I right? And then Key Passenger says, sort of, can't have taxpayers to fund things like pensions, Social Security, or any other type of governmental support. Japan and South Korea made a move to replace workforce with robots, but that sort of backfired because robots don't pay taxes and don't make purchases, so in general, their government received even less revenue in taxes. And at the bottom, Andy says, those gosh darn illegal robots coming in and not paying any taxes, deport them. All right, y'all. I'm glad that people are talking about this all over the place. The fact that this is in the self subreddit is hilarious to me. Anyways, let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.